WCLN 1170 Radio and Star Vision Cable Channel 16 are pleased to present We Should Know, hosted by J.W. Simmons, an upbeat, informative look at people, places, and issues facing our community. This education-based analysis of issues will remain positive and informative as we consider closely what we should know.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. The name of the program is We Should Know. We have a very interesting program for you today. I want to go ahead and tell you need to probably call a friend, tell them to tune in and get prepared for this program. It's something that we've wanted to do for the past 3 shows, actually. We've talked about various issues involving behavioral kinds of things within our communities, behavioral things within our families. We've had mental health folks on a couple of weeks ago, and we've talked about things that you need to know related to mental health. We've talked with the spiritual folks last week, dealing with the whole idea of mental health and the spirituality that exists within our communities and coming together. All of that building around this issue of the horrific massacre up in Connecticut of children, 20 children that were killed, 7 adults, and of course 28 total, including Mr. Adam Lanza that perpetrated that terrible crime. Today we have with us the superintendent of Sampson County Schools, Mr. Dr. Ethan Linker, and Mr. Stuart Blunt with the city schools in Clinton. Gentlemen, thank you for coming in. This is a busy time. It's one of those kinds of subjects that we don't particularly enjoy talking about. And it's not something that's relatively new for us. We look back at the historical map and we see Columbine and we see Virginia Tech. But for some reason, the school system and young children, the ability to look at Newtown, Connecticut, to look at the shooting, the murder, the massacre, the mayhem of 20 children, ages 6, 7 years old. And the numbers of times the human mind, as we talked about with the mental health folks, can only comprehend so much. The question, and we'll get right to it this morning, I think, is are our schools safe? And I'll open that up. Dr. Linker, let's start that with you, and we'll leverage to Mr. Blunt over here and kind of get some discussion on. Are our schools safe in Sampson County?
I think so, and I can say that just 'cause my kids go there. You know, my kids are in Sampson County schools. I walk through the schools every day. I know it to get into places I don't have keys to, so I have to have someone unlock the door for me. You know, so we're doing all those sort of things. But bottom line is, my kids are going to be there, just as long with my kids' friends and my friends' kids and Stuart's kids. It's all about the kids. That's why we do our jobs. It's all about work. What opportunities can we give to our kids down the road? I've said that since I've been here numerous times. It's how many opportunities, or how can we increase the opportunities for kids? And if we can't make them safe, then we're really missing about the first step. So I think they're very, very, very safe.
Stuart, your comments.
And I would concur with Dr. Linker in regards to safety in our schools. I believe that when you look at research and you look at statistics, schools are very much still a very good place for children to be, and not only children but those working in the schools. Our schools continue to be a reflection of society, as we've talked about previously, but as far as safe, coming in and having an environment that is conducive to learning, are there areas that we can continue to improve? Sure, but I think that's in any business, whether it's public schools, whether it's private industry, but yes, doesn't indicate that we won't have issues or we don't have parents or community members who may become emotional or upset. But overall, I'm very confident by the work being done in our schools, through our principals and through our teachers and staff and their visibility, that they're very safe.
As we get into this conversation, I want folks, our listeners and viewers, to kind of get a feel for the dynamics we're dealing with. And Ethan, you and I have talked about in the past the numbers of children you got, the numbers of schools. Kind of give us an idea of how many schools, how many children, and kind of the different levels of schools that you're dealing with in Sampson County, because there's middle schools, elementary schools, high schools, staff people. I know sometimes I'm a little bit set back when you look at all those numbers of folks that literally the buck stops with you.
Now, we're a little over 8,700 kids. You know, we've increased our pre-K classes over the last several years by about almost 200 students. So we're over 8,700. We've got 18 buildings with kids in them, including the community college. You know, with some of our kids there. So that's, you know, and they're all a little different. You know, we've built a lot of new schools in the last 5 or 8, 10 years. And those schools have some things built into place, and we've gone back to our older schools and we're retrofitting some things there to make those schools safe as well. I know if you walk around the schools, you'll see some things that are being put in place. I mean, we're working now on putting in our second wave of camera systems. You know, we put cameras in way back when Columbine came out, and now we're upgrading all those cameras to new high-def cameras and barcode locks. But there's a lot of doors on 18 buildings.
Stuart, what do you think about the city schools? Obviously, less number of buildings and so forth, but density of population is considerably different with Clinton City Schools. Tell us about what you're dealing with the Clinton City Schools as far as population density and those kinds of things.
Well, we have 6 buildings that house students on a daily basis. That is to include our pre-K at the newly renovated College Street School, which is where we house our pre-K. And we have 3 elementary schools, K1, 2, 3, and a 4, 5 combinations, and those 2 grade levels in each of those schools. And of course, the middle school and the high school. Just over 3,000 students is our student population, with a staff population of about 500 to 600 employees. I think Ethan touches on a piece when you talk about retrofitting. You will find across the state and across our nation, when schools were built, there was no Columbine issue. There was no Sandy Hook issue. So you have school buildings that were constructed in an era that violence was not at the level that it is. So the retrofitting does create challenges. One simple one, just to kind of illustrate that, most main offices where the secretaries and the principal's offices are cannot see the main front door. The main front door is usually open to a large corridor hallway, and then the office is off of that. So it does create challenges. The newer construction with schools that definitely have been post-Columbine have architectural firms have put in safety measures. So it is an everyday challenge when you look at trying to retrofit buildings that are 30, 40, 50 years old.
When you look at some of these things, guys, as we're talking about this, do you lay down at night sometimes and have something on your mind and you think, well, you know, maybe I could do this a little bit different, or there's something that needs to be done there, and that's probably, you know.
That's about every night.
Yeah, I was just thinking, probably every night that happens. Is there obstacles that, Stuart, as you were just explaining, are there obstacles to you making the difference between that change, whether it may be technological, whether it may be structural? Obviously, there's a financial side of that. And how do you address that? How do you deal with that, knowing, well, if I had done A, B, C, or D? Because when we look at the thing in Connecticut, I mean, the evaluations has been going on now. This is a little over 2 weeks since Friday morning that this happened. You know, as we look at this, we're looking at, well, what could have been done different there? What specifics could have been done different? And what makes it different than Clinton City School or a Sampson County school, anywhere in the huge county of Sampson that it is? What could we have done different? Do you think about things, and what maybe are some of those things that that you're thinking about?
Well, I think about for us, you know, we've, I don't know about necessarily different, but just trying to get our buildings wired properly. You know, the infrastructure is so key now with the camera systems, the way they work, the card reader systems, the way they work. They all work through the internet. And we're working on that. I know Mr. Blunt is as well, working that with the local police department, so they have access to that information and can see what's going on in the buildings as well. So, but you know, trying to catch up on all those things, you know, and that's you know, a couple $100,000 a school to get to that's just the infrastructure. But then the cameras and the card readers are also very expensive. But it's still, you know, we just got to map it out, which is really what we've been doing for a couple of years, and some schools are there and some schools are still in the process of getting there.
Stuart, with the city schools, a little bit different situation with the city schools in that you, of course, work closely with your security with the local law enforcement community. Are there people in the schools while schools are open that are armed? How does that work for, just kind of lay that picture out for us, how does that work with the city schools?
We do partner with the City of Clinton Police Department in regards to resource officers, school resource officers. We have one that is based at the high school and one that is based at the middle school. And those are great partnerships. And many times our community is confused about why we have police officers in schools, and that it gives the impression that things are out of control, and they're really not. That is a movement across our state and across our nation that has created a great partnership with those that are in the field in law enforcement to be able to provide insight for school personnel about things that are taking place in that specific community. It's kind of a need to know. I mean, what's going on in our community. They need to know kind of what's going on in our schools so that we can together provide a much safer environment for our students. The school resource officers are there, as I see them, as one of their main purposes is to build rapport, to build rapport with our students and our adolescents. Adolescent children are faced with so much more today than they have been in the past with the technology boom, the instant access to things. So having those resources in our schools, and I know that Ethan has some of those as well in his schools, and I see those as a very positive partnership to provide not only a sense of security, but a sense of rapport building with our population.
Does parents relate well to that, Stuart, as far as armed officers in the school? Do they see that as a sense of security?
I believe they do. When you look at, they're now just kind of a normal fixture, just like an English teacher may be in an English classroom, an assistant principal may be in a school. The school resource officer provides such a vast level of knowledge with our students.
Okay. We're going to take our first break, and we're going to be back and continue this discussion. Ladies and gentlemen, you're watching We Should Know. We want you to call a friend and have them tune in. We're talking with superintendents of the city and county schools. You are watching We Should Know. We're coming to you on WCLN 1170 radio. Also, Star Vision TV, Channel 16. This program is a reprint of this program, a summation in the Sampson Weekly newspaper. Also, you can go online and like us on Facebook at We Should Know. If you have questions, comments, suggestions on any of our shows, go to weshouldknowedu@gmail.com. That's weshouldknowedu@gmail.com. Let us know what you think, suggestions, any other comments you might have regards to the show, and we would appreciate that very much. We get a lot of comments on the last few shows we've had with mental health, and also our spiritual show on Christmas. We had a lot of very positive comments on that. A lot of listeners and folks are viewing the program, and we appreciate you doing that. We air Tuesdays 2:30 to 3:30. Also Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday 7 p.m. on Star Vision Channel 16. We're coming to you today talking about a very serious subject, something that always is an interest, I think, to all of our listeners, and that's education. We have Dr. Ethan Linker, Sampson County Schools, Mr. Stuart Blunt with the City Schools, both superintendents. Huge job. And Stuart, you were just talking to us about the SROs in the Clinton City Schools. Equally in Sampson County Schools, you have armed officers there as well. I think they're also called school resource officers. Tell us how that's working, and has that been a positive thing, and how you feel about that as a security item?
Well, it's, we partner with the Sheriff's Department, and we have 5 SROs, one per district, and one that kind of would fill in and go around between the different schools. As Mr. Blunt said, it's really with the kids. It's really about building that rapport, that relationship. More of that. That's one of the things we do that's very proactive, I think. You have that security officer there for other reasons as well. But you see what they can do in building relationships with the kids, which is what we try to get all of our employees to do to help prevent problems down the road.
And these guys that are in schools, we've learned quite a bit. And Stuart, you alluded to Columbine a while ago. Every time we have one of these things, and obviously they come too often, but as we've talked about, we have these things we learn from them. From Columbine, we've learned a lot about armed folks in schools. We've learned a lot about the response time. how police officers handle that job. We've learned, and law enforcement officers statewide now go through annual training called active shooter training, which the first officers there, get lined up and they go in immediately. They don't wait for some, high-skilled tactical team to show up. They go in and try to dispatch the situation. So we've learned that from the law enforcement side. As we look at it from schools, I know you guys are training constantly with emergency responders. What are you learning as you're going through those kinds of training?
A couple of things. One, since Columbine, going way back to when I was a principal, 12 years ago, we all started the active shooter class that the video that the teachers and school employees watch, and what they do in a school. And we practice that drill at every school each semester. So all of our teachers are getting the training. I say teachers, but it's everybody in the school. Getting that training, and then what do they do in the classroom? What do they do with the kids? And then how do they let other people know what's going on in their room? We have the little things in the room where teachers would slide things in or under the doors. So those are things that we do practice. Kind of like a fire drill. We practice them a couple times a year.
You do the same thing in the city schools, I'm sure, and there seems to be a statewide, obviously, effort to do that. Are there uniquenesses that you recognize with the city or the county schools that make it a little bit different or unique for you? For example, with the county schools, I know just the geographical locations makes it a huge difference.
Yeah, geography is huge in the fact that, for the most part, we don't have a lot of foot traffic near our schools, like Clinton City Schools has. We have a couple schools where you may actually have some people walking by on a sidewalk, but not very many. And it takes miles between the closest schools. Except in the Hopton area, but just the geography is a challenge. Of course, that's the whole challenge of Sampson County Schools as a whole. Sure. Is the geography.
Do you have a sense as far as numbers of people? You have one SRO in the school. Is depending on the size of the school, is there a number of concerns of having one person, or is there a need to have more than one?
Well, personally, I'd like to have probably 8 to 10, almost double what we have now. Right. I think if we could have one permanent at each high school that doesn't have to roam in the district, and one at the middle schools that's not roaming. Then if we have another one or two who could roam between schools, would be a very positive thing.
Stuart, a couple of weeks ago, David Keene, the president of the NRA, National Rifle Association, said there should be armed guards in every school in the United States. For the most part, my understanding of the systems that are set up in North Carolina, we pretty much have armed individuals in schools now. When we reflect on that comment and on his comment to have armed guards, we just talked about law enforcement officers, not necessarily guards. I know a lot of these folks, and they would not particularly want to be called guards. Do you see that as a real deterrent in the sense of making a difference? I guess the more poignant question would be, looking at the way the whole issue unfolded in Connecticut, would a person armed there have been able to have stopped that? I know that's conjecture, but hypothetically, do you feel like that would have been a huge deterrent? Well, either one of you can answer.
Well, I
would take it.
Yeah.
I think we would take the extra support for sure. Just that extra level of security. I think we would all feel just a little bit better.
And I agree. I think that is one more layer of providing a sense of security. That's not the silver bullet, and that's not the piece that's going to, hold all violence outside of our schools. But it is a very important component, coupled with the drills that Dr. Linker talks about and the ones that we do as well. But visibility in our hallways by staff members. Schools have foot traffic, and we do have more foot traffic because of the proximity of our schools in the city. But folks know who the regular foot traffic people are. And when things look out of kilter, so to speak, with individuals that may be around the school or walking through, for example, at Butler, there's a sidewalk that walks right through the middle of the two buildings, that connects a neighborhood off to the connector by Big Blue Store. So that we have those types of things. So visibility and being very specific about watching things is important. But I think when you look at security guards or you look at law enforcement, and all of ours are law enforcement officers.
Absolutely.
I mean, they're not the
State
security.
certified.
That's right. I mean, and they bring to them a level of professionalism. And the system, some system that I had come from, the larger the high school, the more law enforcement officers. So it really kind of, the ratio depends on your student population. But again, that is a huge component in providing safety.
Do you see going forward, and as we look at the comments from a number of people, and I want to kind of, since we're on this subject, kind of go to that area now. We've seen nationwide some very unusual situations, whether you look at some of the schools, one school system in Texas at least, and some in Arizona and various other parts of the country, are bringing up subjects related to armed individuals, to include, and not limited to, arming teachers with handguns, to include various aspects of weaponry within the school system. Give us your thoughts on where do we stop with the defense mechanism of armed individuals within schools. Some school systems say, no, we don't want to do that. One particular school system, I believe, if I recall correctly, was maybe Arizona, was instigating a posse kind of operation in which it was civilians, non-certified folks, but they were not in the school or on school property, but they stood around the school armed to guard the school. What is too much? What is not enough? Just give us your sense of some of these, and I shouldn't use the word bizarre, but things that are being done and being proposed to done. Where are we at on that, and what's your thoughts on that?
I don't. That's one. That'd be a major discussion for the board. But I'm not sure. I like the idea of SROs, people who are truly trained to carry guns and use them professionally. That, like, we have sheriff deputies and you have Clinton City Police. That, I think, is probably a pretty decent idea. Here in Sampson County, there's a lot of huntings. We have a lot of people who are good with guns. Yeah. They can certainly handle themselves. I don't know if teachers truly want to be carrying guns to school. Yeah. I mean, I don't want to carry a gun to school.
I mean, that's actually come up. I mean, I'm sure our listeners have already seen this, as we have.
I've not asked teachers if they want to or not, but I just have a hard time thinking that's why they got into the
How does that hit your brain when you try to absorb that? Is that something you would want to see happen?
Well, I think, quite honestly, I think when you look at trying to provide security and the things that are continually asked upon educators to do, we sometimes some of the ideas cross the line of whose responsibility it is to provide a safe and learning environment. Our teachers, there's so much on our teachers and educators' plate as it is now, adding another layer of responsibility. Not only that, I think it creates a very blurred vision of what schools are for. I think when you look at the posse or the group that's surrounding the school, then you have the connotation and the perception that our schools are not safe, that our schools are more of a holding area for criminals. And that is not the perception that I believe that parents, communities, administrators, educators as a whole wish to have. I don't believe that our school systems are at that level of out of controlness. Sure, everyone has opinions in regards to would that deter it, and I believe in some of the research that's come out of the Sandy Hook, that school was locked down. That school had tremendous procedures in place, and they still got in.
We're going to take another break. We'll be back in a moment with the superintendents of the Clinton City Schools and Sampson County Schools. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. The name of the program is We Should Know. We're pleased for you to be watching us today on Star Vision Channel 16. Also listening to us on WCLN 1170 AM. This show is uploaded to YouTube. You can find a number of our shows now on YouTube, and it'll be uploaded Tuesday afternoon. So if you go to YouTube, just type in We Should Know, EDU. You'll see the shows. Just select which one you want to watch and listen to, and you can do that. Also, we're worldwide at oldies1170.com. Just click on the icon and you can hear us live anywhere in the world. We're talking about school security. We're talking with Dr. Ethan Linker, Mr. Stuart Blunt with City Schools. Gentlemen, we just talked about armed individuals in schools. We talked about some of the things that was going on nationwide as it relates to weapons in schools, and particularly with Sandy Hook and what happened there. And you go back again through the identification of what happened. There was one part of that that reading that I did on the evidential matters that was being gathered, and he talked about one young girl, 6 years old, that literally ran out of the school covered with blood. Her entire class of children that she was with had been killed. A lot of these children have been shot multiple times. As we look at that issue, the little girl, according to the reports, ran to her mother and said, you know, I'm okay, but all of my classmates are dead. Now, for me to mention that is to try to bring the importance and gravity to this conversation. And for our listeners, this is an unbelievable, horrific event. We have had shootings, yes, in the past. We have had numbers of people killed. Virginia Tech was more than this. But for some reason, the level, the age level, the defenselessness of these small children has brought it to a whole different conversation. Where do you think we're going with the whole idea of weapons, gun control? Give me your feelings on that. What is your thoughts? Dr. Lincoln, I'll start with you.
I just hope it stays on the table for the most part. You know, it stays there, and we can continue the conversations intellectually about what are we going to do to prevent this from occurring in Sampson County or anywhere. You know, you see pictures of little 6-year-olds, you know, who are just as innocent as anything, and you're trying to figure out how do you protect them, you know, whether it's a SRO or something. But the key thing is we got to keep this conversation alive, you know, so we can, you know, have something to come out of it. I mean, you know, when Columbine came through, we did get some things. You know, I think the Attorney General at that point gave us the little black boxes and some other things. That's where the active shooter thing started, which we're still doing that training.
Absolutely.
Out of Virginia Tech, we learned other things. You know, and then we're learning things here now that, you know, a lot of security in the world is not going to stop some things.
Stuart, that same 6-year-old girl mentioned in the reports, she said the reason she survived and everybody else was horribly killed was that she said she got real still, got quiet, and pretended that she was dead. Now, the question then would be, is there things that we need to be doing training-wise and education-wise, even for our young children, in case of these kinds of things happen? I mean, I recall, maybe as you guys have, way back in my elementary days, believe it or not, I can remember back that far. I can remember that far back. You know, we had drills where you got down behind a desk in case it was an atomic bomb, or if it was a tornado, there were certain drills. Are there drills that children need to be directly involved in, or is that something that at that age is too traumatic for them to get involved in? There's discussion on that, as you know now. I've been involved with a number of discussion groups that have looked at behavioral aspects of children and what we should be asking them to do, what we should be training them to do. Is this somewhere we need to go, Stuart?
Yes, and I think that we're there at a level. I think that we continue to revise and relook, revisit the safety procedures we have in place. I think another component that, as this topic unfortunately continues to come up, and very tragic issues that spark the continued interest and gets people refocused on looking at what can we do and not become complacent. I think not being complacent is extremely important. When you see things that are out of the normal, then you need to look further into that. I think the training aspect, our children, and ironically, following the Sandy Hook, we had some students at our high school that had communicated to one of their teachers that when you look at lockdown drills or you look at things of this nature, can we do more to practice those drills? We do them as Dr. Linker and his system do, usually a couple times a semester. But it was interesting to take a teenager's perspective of, and they related it to fire drills. By law, we are required to do fire drills, and that was because of a horrific fire years and years and years ago in a school, and they're required by law to be practiced once a month. And that student's perspective, and this really to me shows where we have gone from a society perspective. They said we only do these lockdown drills a couple times. Why do we not do them more in order to protect and provide situations that we can learn from? And they kind of summarize that with, when was the last time there was a fire in a school building? But yet we practice that once a month. So those are some things when you talk about dialogue and having it on the table. Our students are a very, very important piece to that puzzle. They can provide strategies, in my opinion, they can provide strategies from their perspective of what would make it safer. Because we have to remember, those in education, the teachers, the staff members, the administrators, all are from a different era. They are not from the era of, mom and pop come to the school and everything's good. That they just walk in and they can walk down to the child's classroom. We're in a whole different culture now. So taking that information from our students, they can provide a lot of security and safety procedures, but we have to bring them to the table. Not only do those individuals need to come to the table, our local law enforcement needs to be at that table, and a fire and rescue, and they are. And I think that's kind of a reassurance, and I think I'm speaking for both of us at this. The relationships in the emergency management world with the public school system or our school systems is there. We continue to build on that relationship. As simple as meeting the fire chief of the local volunteer fire department that's going to go to Hopton. When the building's on fire, it's not when you need to meet the fire chief. Building those relationships, and I stress that with our principals as well. Get to know Chief Tilley, Chief Snyder in regards to their departments. Invite them into their schools. They can see things that you can't see because of their training. Invite them in when there's not a crisis, so that hopefully we don't have a tragic issue of that nature, but that's not the first time we get to know those folks.
Stuart, one of the things too, and to leverage that, I think as we talk about this, I don't want to leverage your comments, Stuart, and Ethan, I want you to think about for the county schools, you've got a different geographic, and we've talked about technology. We talked about guns here. We've talked about technology in the past. The students now are technology apt. They understand. They have constantly at their hands technology. I was in a conversation just a few days ago, and we were talking about technology and how we could leverage that technology as an advantage in situations or in reporting information and those kinds of things. Are there ways, and I'm sure you've already thought about it, are there ways that folks in your school system, students, teachers, employees, can utilize technology in their hand? One of the comments in reviewing the evidential stuff from the school system in Connecticut, there was a teacher that she made a comment. I tried to call 911 and I didn't have my cell tower, that she didn't get connected or what have you, and she was trying to dial 911. Are we looking at those things as well?
Well, at least in the high school realm, we've kind of opened up or reversed our cell phone policy, so to speak, with kids and the students, and basically, the kids are using those in class. We're still, assuming they're not. We're hoping they're not, texting and doing those sort of things. But kids all have cell phones. We know that, and they can text their, and their friends. But we're using them a lot as a instructional tool. So everybody's got access to the internet while they're on campus. So if you have access to Wi-Fi, then you can certainly get a message to different people on what's going on and get information out to people.
And this was a critical issue. I mean, when you look back at part of it, and Stuart, as you said a while ago, we learn every time we have one of these tragedies. But one of the things we saw in this is there was efforts, there was communications being attempted from those people that were closing doors, that were hiding in various enclosed locations, and there were attempts. And you mentioned texting. There seems to be a look, or actually a review. Is there a way we could use that to a better advantage to get quicker response?
I think just as long as, and all of our schools have heavy Wi-Fi in them, so all the kids have access to technology in any of the buildings, and that they not just at the high schools, but in any of the buildings we have Wi-Fi there. The police, the sheriff's department in our parking lot has access to our Wi-Fi capabilities, so they can access the internet there as well. And like nowadays, if you have Wi-Fi, you can pretty much do what you need to do. You can get information out. To whoever you need to get it to.
Do you feel comfortable, both of you, with response times for law enforcement? Again, looking at the report from Connecticut, seemed to be a pretty quick response time. Are you okay with response times for law enforcement?
And I think that's an area that when you practice drills or you involve those who are going to be responding to your school, that's where that's improved.
We're going to take another break and come back in a moment. We're talking about a very serious and interesting subject with the superintendent of the city schools and county schools. We're talking about tragedy in Connecticut. If you will stay with us, call a friend. We'll be back in a moment with We Should Know. We're talking about school security, our public schools, our children, some of the most important issues related to those small children we love, and what happened in Connecticut has kind of spurred a huge number of events. One of the things that we're hoping, as we're talking with the superintendent of Sampson County Schools, Dr. Ethan Linker, Mr. Stuart Blunt, superintendent of city schools, one of the things, gentlemen, we're hoping is that as news cycles are, and as you know the way news cycles operate, it seems like about a 24-hour period and there's something else to be talked about. And for those folks that are listening to this show, we're a little over 2 weeks out from the shooting in Connecticut. We're hoping that we can kind of keep alive this issue of what we need to do, refocusing on our education system, the critical importance of having a safe educational system. And with doing that, one of the things that both of you guys have been involved in is drills and practical exercises. Stuart, you just alluded to the fire drills that typically goes on in schools and have been going on since I was little, but now we're doing drills and exercises dealing with shooting and acts of violence in schools. Is that something, do you think we need to be doing quarterly, annually, biannually? How do you see that unfolding going forward now from the shooting in Sandy Cove?
No, I would guess that we'll continue the active shooter type of drills, and we'll continue with our training and probably even get more involved. As Stuart said, the kids have great vision for what's in the school. Mm-hmm. What they see is important to that process. I also like to say, just a couple weeks ago, the local EMT, we had at the old Midway High School, the new Midway Elementary, we had a mock training, I guess, where we had an active shooter come in. We had kids playing kids and teachers playing teachers, and then the sheriff's department and other people were coming in and seeing how the responses worked, and that allowed us to see our strengths. I think we talked about that earlier. See our strengths and see areas we need to keep working on as a community. But we do these drills, I hope everyone understands why we do these drills. We're doing these drills not because, like Stuart walks around his schools, I walk around my schools, the schools are safe. Well, we do these drills really just in case something horrific like Connecticut would come up to play, so people know what to do. And we can be proactive and have everybody trained. And it's not that the schools are not safe, but you just got to be proactive about what you're trying to do.
Stuart, you were talking about a while ago, there's a number of layers of security that's involved with schools, as there is in your home or anywhere else that you're trying to secure. How important is it that you know your community and you know your parents? How important is that for you?
It's vital. I think visibility from from teachers in the community to educators in the community, community members understanding what our schools are about. That's the key, I believe. I think you've hit on something that you've got to know what makes up your school environment. You have to be out and be visible. You need to know where the hot spots are. You need to know how to build relationships within those pieces in those communities, because every school system has a pocket of communities that filter into one building. And with that brings challenges, whether it's the county or whether it's the city. But knowing those individuals and knowing who to go to if there are issues. There are a lot of key community members, and they're not always those that are in the limelight. It may be the farmer down the road that is plowing a field and notices something that's out of the ordinary. I mean, I think, and especially if it's around a school, those are people, but you got to know who those folks are. You got to be out and you got to be visible. I know Ethan just mentioned that, walking through schools, walking through, it may be the general store on the corner, and going down and have a conversation about things and getting out there. But the preventative, those are all, I believe, are key strategies to be preventative in regards to school security. I've always tried to follow a philosophy that if you prepare for the worst case scenario, then everything else is a walk in the park. But you've got to be able to have that vision and to have the opportunity to what's going to happen if we have a Sandy Hook in the city of Clinton. Do we have things in place to ensure loss of life is minimal, to make sure that we have things in place to secure our students? And I think you've hit on it. The Sandy Hook has really hit home as a father of three. I just cannot fathom the 6 and 7 year olds and just innocent victims in this horrific tragedy in Sandy Hook. It really hits home. I think it hits home in communities. It hits home in people's homes, and I think we're got to continue to improve on what we do to provide a safe environment.
Let me just take just a quick comment here. I don't want to get this in because this show goes real fast, as both of you know. I want to thank both of you for coming in today to talk with us, because in reality, for most folks, this is day off. This is the kind of vacation time, but really, you guys don't get a whole lot of off time, because you're either thinking about it, trying to communicate, as you just said, with folks in the community, trying to work out details, trying to leverage resources to not only make sure these things don't happen, but needs of schools and so forth as we move forward. How hard is that to get folks to understand? And as you're talking to parents today, get them to understand the huge job and responsibility of not only you, but the teachers and staff and all others in this whole huge machine of educating children, and at the same time protecting them in a safe environment so they're not so concerned about something happening they can't study and give you. How hard is that?
I think that for the vast majority of teachers, teacher assistants, principals, superintendents, it's not just a job. We don't just do it just to get paid. You do it because you truly care about kids. Mm-hmm. And you could, when I met with the principals after the week before we got out for Christmas, after the incident, there's not one of them who wouldn't have done what their assistant principal or their principal had done up there. Or we don't have teachers who wouldn't have done what those teachers have done, who would have sacrificed themselves. And that's the type of quality of people we have. And that's where I think Sampson County, Clinton City, is what makes us great, is that we have great people. Mm-hmm. But I know our teachers, care about their kids, not just trying to teach them math and English, but care about these kids growing up. And that's where you talk about pockets of community. Our teachers live in these communities. Our teachers know these kids and know the families. So it's more than just a student. This is a community kid. This is a somebody from the community. This is a family. And that makes a huge difference. Then, just the fact that, once you're superintendent, you're never not superintendent. People, I've gotten lots of phone calls, as I'm sure Stuart has. What are you doing to keep our schools safe? So I'm kind of glad we got to talk about this. But, these conversations are always ongoing. And the idea of just trying to get it a little bit safer as often as we can.
And I think it's important what you just said for folks to hear that, because I know when I called you and we were talking about these issues after this shooting, you were at that time in intense communications with your school board and various other folks looking at every aspect, every detail. What can we do? Stuart, with the city schools, and a question for both of you, are there things that you're looking at now that we really need to focus on and change that is going to require some financial leverage?
I think that there's a financial.
Everything takes money.
There's a financial component.
Maybe I should say how much.
Well, I think there's a financial component to it as well, but I think there are a lot of things that are non-financial that can be done. And again, I think that goes back to those relationship pieces, knowing who's in your building. If you pass someone in the hallway and you're a teacher assistant or you're a classroom teacher and you don't know who that person is and they don't have any identification indicating they've checked in anywhere, you need to stop and ask that question. Sure, I don't believe money's the answer to safe schools. I think visibility is a huge component. The financial resources, if it is there, is very beneficial. I'm not discounting the opportunity to improve infrastructures. We have to improve infrastructures. Our society and our community will not allow us not to be safe. And with that comes a price, and inconvenience. And sometimes when you look at safety, inconvenience is not an issue to me when it talks about who's in our schools, who has access to our classrooms, because our classrooms are sacred when it comes to instructional space. And you can't walk into a bank and go behind the bank teller. You can't walk into a private industry and go behind the counter from the receptionist without being given permission. Our classrooms are that same type of environment. There's learning, there's education taking place behind those doors.
I want to give you a few seconds to wrap up here and just tell parents, folks listening, something from the heart you want them to know. And I'll start with you, Douglas.
The vision for Sampson County Schools, at least for the years I've been here, has always been dedicated to continuous improvement. And we focus a lot on the academics, but it involves everything, whether that's the teacher quality, principal quality, superintendent quality. Everybody's getting a little bit better at what they do. Now it's also involving security issues, which if you've seen the buildings, you know we've been upgrading all those for the last 4 or 5 years. So the idea is we take all that very seriously, and we do have goals that we're working towards.
Okay.
And ours would be very similar. I mean, you look at continuous improvement, whether it's academic, whether it's security, whether it's relationship building, it's important, all the more.
Phone number, if somebody wanted to call to give you information, where would they reach you?
They can call our main number, and they can speak to our PIO,
okay,
our Public Information Officer, which is 592-1401.
1401, Stuart?
And ours would be 592-3132. Ms. Terrace Miller handles the public information.
Okay. Thank you both for being with us today. It's been a great show. It's one of those things, folks, that we have to talk about periodically. You have the telephone numbers. You've got the information from the superintendent of Sampson County School. And next week, we have a very excellent show planned for you. We look forward to seeing you again next week on the radio.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of We Should Know with host J.W. Simmons. If you have a question or comment regarding this or any episode, please send your email questions and or comments to jwsimmonsedu@gmail.com. And remember to tune in every Tuesday afternoon beginning at 2:30 for another informative episode of We Should Know.